From a distance, it might seem like just another routine patrol in international waters. But beneath the calm waves of the South China Sea, something far more serious is unfolding. A U.S. Navy destroyer, quietly asserting freedom of navigation, suddenly finds itself being shadowed and then dangerously cut off by a Chinese warship. This wasn't an accident, it was a message. In this video, we break down China's aggressive move on a U.S. ship, what led to it, and most importantly, what could happen next. Because in today's world, one wrong turn at sea could spark something no one wants. Why the South China Sea really matters. The South China Sea isn't just a body of water, it's a high-stakes chessboard of international power. Every year, over $3 trillion worth of trade flows through it. Beneath the surface? Potentially vast oil and gas reserves. Surrounding it? Countries like Vietnam, the Philippines, Malaysia, and China. And here's the problem. China claims nearly the entire sea as its own, drawing what's known as the 9-dash line across areas internationally recognized as belonging to others. It's a claim rejected by the Permanent Court of Arbitration in 2016. But China hasn't backed down. In fact, it's done the opposite. By building artificial islands and militarizing them with airstrips, radars, and missile systems, China is reshaping geography to change international law in its favor. Other nations protest, but Beijing pushes ahead. That's where the U.S. comes in. With no territorial claim in the region, America still sees itself as the defender of international norms. By conducting freedom of navigation operations (FONOPs), it challenges what it sees as illegal claims and keeps the sea lanes open. China's tactics at sea, a silent offensive. China's strategy in the South China Sea is more complex than just military showdowns. It's what experts call gray zone warfare, actions that are aggressive but just below the threshold of armed conflict. Take, for example, China's maritime militia fishing vessels that are unofficially backed by the government. These boats swarm disputed waters, crowding out other nations' ships and creating a sense of ownership through constant presence. Add to that the Chinese Coast Guard, which is now the largest in the world and often operates more like a navy. Then there's the rapid expansion of the People's Liberation Army Navy, or PLAN. In just a few years, China's navy has become the largest in the world by number of ships, and these vessels aren't sitting idle. They're patrolling contested areas, conducting drills, and issuing warnings to any ship they see as trespassing. The U.S. presence, calm but calculated. While China pushes boundaries, the U.S. maintains its stance through a mix of restraint and readiness. Freedom of navigation. Operations are carefully planned, announced in advance to allies, and executed with precision. They're not meant to provoke, but to demonstrate. These missions send a clear message. International law matters. No country, no matter how powerful, can unilaterally claim entire regions of the sea. U.S. Navy ships, often backed by nearby carriers and aircraft, pass through contested waters not to escalate tensions, but to prevent the rewriting of global rules. And the U.S. isn't acting alone. Partnerships in the Indo-Pacific are central to its strategy. Joint naval drills with countries like Japan, Australia, and India increase interoperability. The Philippines and Vietnam, both directly affected by China's claims, have recently deepened ties with Washington. In the recent incident, the U.S. destroyer maintained course and speed, avoiding direct confrontation but not backing down. It was a calculated move to show strength without tipping into escalation. Even though these humongous world economies can't stay out of each other's noses for good, what does everyone else think on this matter? What the world thinks. While the South China Sea is a regional hotspot, its consequences are global, and nations around the world are watching closely. Southeast Asian countries are caught in a difficult position. Many have territorial disputes with China, but also rely heavily on Chinese trade and investment. The Philippines, for example, has seen a tug-of-war in its foreign policy, tilting toward Beijing under one president and pivoting back to the U.S. under another. Vietnam, on the other hand, has been more openly critical of Chinese incursions. But even then, responses are cautious because confrontation with a superpower has its costs. Outside the region, European countries like the UK and France have started sending their own ships through the South China Sea, signaling support for open seas. Canada, India, and even Germany have spoken out against unilateral actions. But without a unified response, China's strategy thrives: divide and dominate. While one nation protests, another signs a trade deal. It's a delicate balance and one that Beijing has proven adept at navigating. The question is, how long can this balancing act hold before someone slips? Close calls and dangerous games. The recent encounter between the Chinese warship and the US destroyer wasn't the first, and it won't be the last. But each time it happens, the margin for error shrinks. In this latest event, a Chinese vessel cut across the bow of a US ship, coming within 150 yards, a dangerously close distance for two warships. These aren't small boats. They don't turn on a dime. One wrong calculation, one delayed reaction, and the result could be catastrophic. And when warships collide, it's not just about property damage. It's about national pride, political fallout, and potential military escalation. Once blood is spilled, even accidentally, it becomes harder for leaders to dial things back. The South China Sea may be vast, but encounters like this make it feel smaller and more crowded than ever. As ships, aircraft, and Coast Guard units from multiple nations navigate the same waters, the risks multiply. And in such an environment, the next incident might not end with just a headline. It might start something much worse. Diplomacy versus reality. Bilateral talks between the US and China happen, often behind closed doors. Military leaders meet. Defense hotlines stay open. And on the surface, both sides agree on the need to avoid escalation. But words alone won't change reality. Each nation views the sea through its own lens. For China, it's about sovereignty and historical rights. For the US, it's about freedom of navigation and international law. The challenge is finding a way forward that doesn't involve confrontation, but also doesn't reward aggression. And with each new close call, that path becomes harder to see. Global stakes, more than just a regional fight. Why should the world care about a standoff thousands of miles from their borders? Because what happens in the South China Sea doesn't stay there. The sea is a major artery for global trade. Oil, gas, electronics, clothing, you name it, it passes through here. A conflict would disrupt supply chains, spike shipping insurance costs, and rattle economies worldwide. Beyond trade, it's about precedent. If one nation can redraw maritime boundaries through sheer presence and force, what stops others from doing the same elsewhere? In the Arctic, in the Mediterranean, in the Pacific. And then there's the military dimension. Both China and the US are nuclear powers. Even cyber warfare and economic retaliation are on the table. Sanctions, trade wars, and hacking campaigns. So while the ships may be the ones moving, the consequences affect us all. Stability in the South China Sea isn't just an Asian concern. It's a global priority. What happens next? In the short term, we can expect more of the same. US patrols will continue. China will respond. The pattern of shadowing, warnings, and close calls is now a familiar rhythm. But over time, something's got to give. The US might seek to strengthen alliances further, expanding naval cooperation with other Indo-Pacific countries. Expect more joint exercises, more surveillance flights, and maybe even increased basing agreements in strategic areas. China, meanwhile, will likely double down. New vessels, more island construction, and broader claims. Domestically, it can't afford to look weak. The real wild card? A crisis. An unexpected clash that neither side planned but both must respond to. That's where diplomacy becomes vital. Establishing clearer communication protocols, enhancing crisis response tools, building real trust, not just formalities. Because if these systems fail, the cost won't just be strategic, it will be human. What began as a single aggressive maneuver at sea is really part of something much bigger. a long-term contest over rules, power, and influence, a test of who gets to set the terms in the 21st century. As China pushes its boundaries and the US pushes back, the stakes continue to rise. But amid all this, one thing is certain: the world is watching. And the decisions made out at sea today could shape the peace or conflict of tomorrow.